Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to my second author roundtable video. My name is Lachlan Pirie, and joining me today are a very talented group of young authors from Australia and New Zealand. I'd like to welcome Vanessa Romanov, Harriet Pierce, AJ Creamer, and Tom Stadolka. Today we will be talking about the process of writing to how writing has changed us as people. If you guys enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, if you'd like to find out more about us, you can find our social media details in the description section below. So guys, just starting off with a very simple question. What's your greatest source of inspiration as writers?
Well, I guess my greatest source of inspiration would be what I see around me. So, like, if I see something on the news, or if I have experienced something, or if I hear about something, like, I tend to write about it.
Can you speak up a bit, Vanessa?
Sorry, my
That's
laptop volume is not like this. So I would see myself as a reporter, reporting on what's going on around the world. So, like, if I see something or if I hear something, I'm going to report about it.
All right, awesome. Tom?
Well, that sounds really interesting because that's what I think I do as well. Just being out and about, traveling around mainly southeast Queensland and sometimes further afield, just to be able to observe, to notice, and share then what the experiences have been, whether it's people or the highways and the byways, trees, mountains, and sit down with people and capture their thoughts and sometimes just sit in a coffee shop and observe somebody in the distance and then capture it in poetry. It's really just observations on life as much as anything. Yeah. And then talking about family as well and friends, and sometimes there'll be more about a friend or more about a member of the family. My mother's almost 98, so she features in both books. Yeah. Storm Clouds and Silver Linings, My Journey, and then the second book, Life is a Dance. And now we've got the COVID years, so the next book's going to be called Life is a Drama.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot, Lachlan.
Harriet?
So for me, you'll know, Lachlan, that I'm very passionate about mental health.
Yeah.
So a lot of my writing has that in mind. I tend to tackle subjects that people don't necessarily like to write about. Yeah. So my kind of methodology around it all is that I like to write with the inspiration of people in mind, you know, like stories of people that are for people to kind of help people understand people better. So, yeah. You know, I wrote about my PTSD, and my current work in progress at the moment is about a father and son going through dementia. Yeah. So kind of tackles these subjects pretty like head on to kind of help people understand what people go through in life. Yeah.
Very good, Harriet. AJ?
Definitely music. As I keep telling everyone that asks, I just love music, love thrash metal, all that sort of stuff, even some metalcore, and like, you know, Parkway Drive, bands like that. So that music is just massive for me. And then other inspirations, definitely like you guys said, like I tend to watch people, but I've been thinking lately about, you know, a lot more about like author voice, what I want to achieve, like what do you want to do? And it's always a good what if, like what if you did make it, you know? And I think for me, I want to just be able to contribute, like whether it's like Harriet just said about like anxiety and PTSD are not in my realm, neither straight up poetry, but I would use both of those in a theme, like if I was writing about a theme. So I tend to start with what if, you know, what if something happened, and then write it out like a thought experiment nearly. So yeah, I don't know, just music, and then I just do stuff and other things happen, and that's it.
Totally, AJ. Awesome. So I know myself, when you start off as an author without a big name and without the support of those big publishing houses, it's very challenging getting your book out there. How have you been getting people interested in your stories, starting with Vanessa?
I'm very fortunate enough to have a very big family and friend support. because I was able to communicate. Now, coming from a Macedonian background, I was able to sort of convince my friends and family to buy my books and to read them, and I've got like a lot of positive feedback on it. And yeah, so I guess background, like personal, family, and friend support background really helps.
Yeah, totally. How are you going, Tom? You got to move around.
Oh, sorry.
Well, let's skip to Harriet.
It's just, sorry about that. The internet connection was playing up a bit, so I was plugging it in. Just what was that question again, Lachlan? Sorry.
So it's mainly about tackling how you're gonna approach making a name for yourself when you don't have the support of those big publishing houses. How do you?
Oh, that's a really good question. I guess being connected with Ocean Reef Publishing has really helped because it gives you encouragement, it builds your confidence, it encourages you to do the whole Facebook stuff in your website, and so that's an opportunity. But also, a lot of it rests on your own shoulders. And I tend to move around a fair bit, so I'm in a lot of coffee shops, and with the work I do as a mediator, connecting with people all the time, and connected with a lot of groups. So that helps enormously.
Yeah.
And when I started off with Facebook, I would have had about maybe 50 people. Now I'm up to almost 1,500, and one thing leads to another. So just staying connected with people, and that's why you and I met down the Gold Coast a few months ago, and now you're very inspirational with doing this group, and you make an offer, and then you think, well, geez, wouldn't it be silly not to accept a kind offer like yours, Lachlan? And all of a sudden, I'm sitting here with Vanessa, and with AJ, and with Harriet, and with you, Lachlan, and you're all very inspirational people. You're all out there, and you're all connected on a whole lot of levels. When I think of that mental health type of environment, or the just life in general, and observations about people, that we're all, in a funny sort of way, we're all quite similar. It's quite extraordinary. So thanks for that question, Lachlan.
Thanks very much for that. Harriet?
So I made Instagram kind of at the beginning of March, and I've grown to nearly 3,000 followers. So for me, my main kind of way of connecting people with my work has been through Instagram, and it's been pretty successful. I've been quite lucky in the fact that with my first book in the Invisible War series is that I had 14 veterans contribute to that book. So I've had enormous amount of support from the military community with that book in particular. I really think social media is the way to go, and it's free. I mean, the bonus is that it's free. I'm trying to do TikTok and all that, but I'm not doing well at that. So just Instagram for now.
Yeah, totally. AJ, what's your thoughts?
Like everyone said, I started local and networked with just common places, obviously, bookstores, cafes, etc. And same deal. I've got a good support, well, not support network, but a good network from hospitality and from education. But I've been really thinking about it lately, like what to do. I've been thinking about it really long and hard, and I have a lot of content I plan to produce, and it's more a matter of how do you, like, if they were all cards, like what's the best way to play those cards?
Yeah.
Is what I've been thinking. So for example, like doing cartoons, and then I have a lot of voiceover work I've done for my books, I mean. So if I was to do cartoons and then voiceover my own work on like adult cartoon, that would be awesome. But then there's a lot of time associated with that also, but it does open up YouTube and Instagram, like Harriet just said. And I also, not only do I not try TikTok, I actually despise it. So the chance of me doing that is zero. Yeah. But I know it's massive. I just don't have the butt for it, or I'd be twerking away. But
Hi, Jay. All right, so how do you guys want to stand out as authors? What do you hope people take away from your books?
I guess so for me,
Vanessa,
because-
could you lean forward a little bit? So,
sorry, I guess for me, because I don't stick to one category, I put myself in like many different categories. I do poetry, short stories, commentary, and like I want to be able to speak to a wide range of audience. So it's not just the poetry community or the short stories. It needs to like have like a bit of commentary as well. So I really hope that people, because I have a lot of like different types of education within my books, so I really hope like people can find out new things about the world and maybe about themselves.
very good, Vanessa. Tom?
Yeah, that's really, really good in relation to what I heard Vanessa say. I mentioned before that I comment about people and, your day-to-day experiences. And then every now and then in a poem, there'll be some commentary about hope, about life, about staying positive, connecting with my work a fair bit as a mediator, seeing things in a positive light, glass half full. But then there's occasional commentaries about mental health as well. So it's interesting how we've got that mental health connection here with a few of us today, recognising that people are under a lot of pressure out there in the day-to-day world, just making comments about those day-to-day things, especially, when you think of the COVID world. Sorry, there's a bit of noise in the background. And also about the environment and nature and salvaging nature as best as we can, and recognising the role of farmers in the Australian culture and the Australian scene, how dependent we are on farmers having a good run with the weather, with getting over floods and over droughts and over fires. And the interesting thing is not only farmers, but, when you think of the whole eastern seaboard only a year or so ago, affected by floods. And that was, not that long after fires. So how dependent we are on working within nature and trying to get that combination right. And often we don't do that well at it because it's a really difficult question. It's a difficult issue to get right. And there are a lot of pressures on every one of us in society, as a growing population. People have to be housed. So how do you house people in an environment that doesn't cause too much damage to the surroundings that we have? Thanks, Lachlan.
Very good, Tom. Harriet?
So for me, each one of my books, I kind of pick a lesson that I want portrayed out of it. So in my first book, which was about a woman coming to terms with the death of her husband by suicide, which wasn't a nice start to the book, but it explored the 7 layers of grief. So I think for someone that, maybe not had lost someone in that horrific kind of circumstance, but any kind of way, it kind of just normalized the sensations of grief, kind of taking one step forward, 2 back at times. And then in my second book, obviously with the PTSD, I really wanted it kind of emphasized about, people have the perception that veterans that have got PTSD are quite, out the gate as such. But it kind of put into context what some of them are exposed to, and, in a horrific sense of what, depending on what division you are in the army, what you can actually go through and how the brain is meant to kind of process that after war.
Yeah.
And the current book that I'm writing, which, you know, actually I've got 2 books at the moment that I'm writing, but the dementia book, again, it comes back to the grief. So the character in this book, he's an only child after losing his brother to sudden infant death syndrome when he was a toddler. So the book kind of has layers of the parents' grief in that, which was unresolved because the character's never gone into a romantic relationship and he doesn't understand why. So kind of halfway through the book, you kind of really take a look at what unresolved trauma can manifest as an adult. You know, he'd watched his parents not able to let the child go and how that had, you know, influenced the way he viewed relationships as such. So I take little lessons, and I think I just really want to normalize emotion, because I think so much of today's society wants to kind of numb emotion and make it not a common thing. You know, we're told that we've just kind of got to chug on and kind of accept what is, but that's not life. You know, it's not life at all. And I think the more we distance ourselves from emotion, the more problems humans are going to have as a society. So that's my long-winded take on it.
No, that's great stuff, Harriet. Absolutely spot on. AJ?
Yeah, that's really interesting. I agree, Harriet. If everyone does seem to do that, suppress this and just drive on, and it is a lot more open now than when I grew up. I'm only 40, so I'm not old, but like when I grew up, there was no like, you didn't say if you were upset or something. Like, yeah, no parent cared. Like, what? Who are you talking to? Just anyway, I could chat. I could talk for a long time, so I'll stay focused. Definitely. I don't know, man. I've been off on a weird tangent. Hey, I've been way off. So I'll just have to write whatever's true to that story. So like Tom said, if I come up with a name and I love that name, like that's what it is. If that's what the artwork is, and that's what it is. And like Harriet said, if it starts with, you know, the suicide of someone you love, if that's exploring a topic, like if that's what that artwork is, and that's what I'm doing. And then from there, what I've learned, right, is if someone reads it and goes, this is 1 out of 10, this is horrendous. If it's 10 out of 10 to me, it could be 1 out of 10 to someone else. Like that's not, you know, it's so subjective. And as long as what I've created is true to myself, like that's fine. You can like it or not like it. That's where I've been at with it all.
Very good, AJ. We have quite a heavy mix here, so I think it's a good question to ask this one. So as writers, has there been certain tendencies or themes that you've wanted to avoid? Starting with Vanessa.
No, because I'm the type of person that messes with the uncomfortable. So any uncomfortable topics that Lachlan knows, any type of topics, including murder, trigger warning, rape, or any other a very heavy topic, I will, and I've covered it. So
Great stuff, Vanessa. Tom?
Yeah, geez, that's an interesting one. I think I just write whatever I see right in front of me. I guess there's that underlying theme. You get a bit of a reputation as well, you know, that I'm always smiling, always trying to be positive and encouraging and happy about things. But then you slip in those themes about, you know, the environment, or you slip in those themes about people being sad when they're getting older and losing friends and mental health issues. And then try to finish on a happier note if you can. You can't always do that. I mean, the first poem I wrote was in 1976, and it was about the environment then, which is really weird. And, you know, some of the new developing nations were there was so much enthusiasm and everything was so positive in those days after the Vietnam War. And then all of a sudden, you know, years later, a lot of the things that were being done in the new countries were picking up just the mistakes that the older countries had made. So, you know, I guess the theme there is, do we learn how do we learn to avoid those problems of that other people or other countries have been through. So I love your questions, Lachlan. You really get us into the nitty-gritty of things. It's fantastic, mate. Well done. Thank you.
Absolutely. Harriet?
Sorry, what was the question? I didn't quite catch what the question was.
It's sort of about have you been wanting to avoid certain themes in your stories? Is there something that you just do not want to address?
Okay, so I might catch a bit of slack for this, but I really despise books that glorify rape and stuff.
Yeah.
There's quite a few of them out at the moment. It makes me really uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Not that it's something that I have been through myself, but I know someone that has, and it's just not for me.
Yeah.
And also, like, I'm not a big romance person at all either. I'm all for that kind of stuff, but I like painting things pretty realistic, you know. I don't know. I have a funny perception that I think it's fine to write like fantasy, but there also needs to be elements of realism in writing, because, you know, people do lose themselves writing, and it can become like a secondary world. And I think, yeah, there's just got to be a bit of realism, because otherwise it can affect how you view actual life. Yeah.
Totally agree with that, Harriet. Yeah, and the stuff that you guys are writing, I don't see anything in your books that sort of goes towards something that is like a fanciful perception that draws away from reality. And that's what I really like about you guys and your writing. But back to the question, what do you think, AJ?
I mean, I would write about, like, very similar to what everyone just said. There's nothing I wouldn't write about, but if it's not adding to my story, like, I'm not going to put in especially, like rape scenes. I have written them, but not in like, I wanted something bad to happen so the character could then show how brutal he would be to someone who's done something that brutal. So it served a very purposeful point for my book. There's nothing I wouldn't write, but yeah, same deal, like romance. I mean, there's so many romance books. I don't have anything to add to that. Not that I don't like it. I mean, I've been married for 20 years. It just isn't, it just doesn't interest me really. So I would write anything, but usually it'll be a theme, like a what if. So I'll take the world as it is. What if this happened? And I'll nearly write it as like a thought experiment. And where that takes me is where it takes me. Pretty rare I do anything, same as Harriet said, glorifying rape or child murder or something. That'd be ridiculous.
On to the next topic. How have you guys been approaching literary agents and publishers, and what are your thoughts on breaking into the literary industry?
I haven't really approached agents or publishers simply because with COVID. I just published my first book last year in April, so I didn't really like have the chance to go out and speak to publishers and agents.
Yeah, true. Tom?
I guess I've stayed, I mean, I've only got 2 books out there and a third one to come out, Life as a Drama, as I said. And, you know, for me, it's about connecting with people and staying with people who've been loyal to you.
Yep.
You know, there's obvious for maybe other authors in a different situation to myself. I guess maybe if I was a lot younger, I'm 70 years of age, and I was connected up with Ocean Reef Publishing through a lady who ran a bookshop in Butterham called Autumn Leaves. Her name's Linda Henderson. She was from New Zealand. She's gone back to New Zealand, and she's over in Hawke's Bay, actually, Vanessa. You might meet up with Linda Henderson in Hawke's Bay. You'd know Hawke's Bay. I mean Harriet. You'd know that area pretty well, I'm sure. And so I guess, yeah, it's, I guess, you know, like I've done a podcast with Ocean Reef Publishing, so that's out there as well. You talked earlier about, you know, promotional stuff, and that's out there. And I think for me, I'm better off just staying with people I know. I've worked really well with Jason Smith, who's the deputy to Ocean. And as you might know, they've bought a printing company now, Clark and Mackay. And so it's a bit of one-stop shop out there in just beyond Archerfield in Bris Vegas. Anyway, the other way is I certainly get around to, we've talked about coffee shops and people, but local bookshops, you know, like the Mullaney Bookshop, and Jackie Prugsha dropped in there the other day and said, you know, how happy she enjoyed that experience with Ian, who runs the Mullaney Bookshop, and how supportive he is of local artists. So opportunities like that with local bookshops who are happy to promote you, that's really special. There's something really special about that. And it's a bit of a thing if you live in the country. I mean, sort of the country up in the Sunshine Coast hinterland. We live in Landsborough, and Mullaney's just up the road, and it's a bit of a tourist place. So I'm out there, out and about with that sort of stuff, the local scene. And the local newspapers as well. I got an AM in the Queen's Birthday Honours Awards in June of this year. And of course, very generously, not of course, very generously, the local newspaper, Glass House and Mullaney News, they did a really fantastic article about my award, and also about the books I've written, and also about the fact that I became Facilitator of the Year last year and Mediator of the Year before that. And so it's amazing how your work connects up with your writing and vice versa. Yeah. And I think that's been a really, really positive way as well along that path of promotion. Thanks, Lachlan.
Very good, Tom.
So I have two ways of looking at this. So I actually recently, yesterday, put in some submissions to some UK literacy agents for my dementia book. Yeah. But I will always only indie publish anything that I write that's military related, because I think that it needs to be written in a way that does it justice for the guys that are involved. The reason why I went to the literacy agent for the dementia book is because I've only been writing since end of February this year. I saw it as an opportunity for growth, because obviously they're going to look at it, you know, sometimes they don't get back to you, but sometimes they do and tell you, you know, what their perception of it was. So for me, it was more opportunity for growth, and because I can't market for crap, excuse my language, but I'm terrible at marketing my work. I don't like pushing my work on people. But I want to write. At the end of the day, I want to be a writer. So for me, it's more the lesser of two evils. Will I approach a literacy agent for every piece that I write? No, absolutely not. But for the ones that I feel are needed to be read by masses, I do think that I will. Yeah, if that makes sense. There's two ways to look at it, you know. A lot of people do shun the whole publishing kind of industry, saying that, you know, it is really hard to break into, and that, you know, they tend to only look for certain things. But I think that's wrong, because, you know, there are a lot of new authors that are coming out that are probably not what you'd expect. You know, they're not the generic. I think it's just all who you go to and what you're trying to get out of it.
Totally. Hey, Joan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think on the back of that too, just to continue what Harriet's up to, like maybe your book, like for example, I know my book, maybe it isn't very big market that would read that sort of work, and that's completely fair. So they might read it and say it's good literature, but at most, maybe they can't sell 10,000 of that particular book. And that's, you know, it's not an insult to the author or nothing wrong with what you've created. It's just it's just a market like anything, isn't it? Man, I'd sell out in a second. Absolutely. I just haven't worked with agents. There's a lot of things I don't like about it, but like exactly what Harriet said, like marketing is massive, man. And you just can't, you know, like they do take a lot of money, but they put a lot of work in, and they are taking a gamble on you, as, you know, a complete gamble. And I've read, I have a fairly decent Twitter following, and I read a lot of other indie authors, especially from America, and some of them are terrible. Like they shouldn't be published. Like, And that's completely reasonable to say that. Just what I mean by that is not even the story, just poor grammar, poor spelling, syntax, you know, but you can self-publish. So I would, but my aim at the moment, I was listening to a podcast with JP Pan, and she was saying about if you look at your work like a bakery, if you went into a bakery and you had one product, even if it was the best product you could make, it's still one product. So I've been really working on my products to get more, just a clearer name to what my author brand will be, and then I'm going to march forward. That's my aim at the moment.
That's a really good way of putting it, AJ.
I stole that, but it is a good way of putting it.
That's awesome. So guys, are you ever dissatisfied with your final product? Is there still something you can't get across in your final pages?
Yeah, I personally hate my fourth book, the Volume 2 of Intellectual Conversations. I don't know, like there's very wholesome content in regards to my personal, life with family and friends and whatnot. But I don't know, there's just something about it that I'm not happy with. So I don't know, someone else might like the product, but for me, I'm simply not happy with it.
Yeah.
But I think that's everyone's. I think everyone has like this self-doubt in their head where they're like, oh, is this going to be good? Is this going to be terrible? I think everyone goes through that.
Absolutely. Vanessa? Tom?
I think my biggest worry is I feel really frustrated that I don't write enough.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll only write a poem one every month or one every 2 months. And that is just so, I feel a bit critical of myself, very critical. It's sort of letting yourself down and when you want to write. So what I do then finally write, and it's only like a page, like it's a poem, as I said before, about life or circumstances or people or nature. And then generally I'm okay with what I do write. And that sounds very non-self-critical, and we're supposed to be critical. I guess every time I write one, I send them off to my family, my wife and 3 kids. And I mean, the kids are very generous and very gracious and always said, that's fantastic, Dad. But my wife's a lot more critical. And she said the other day, that's awful. That's really bad. And you shouldn't send that one out. Don't put that one in the next book. And it was all about population, actually. We were talking about, in the poem, it was about, for some reason, people having more kids and that, and I thought it was okay, but my wife didn't think it was that good. So it is in the eye of the beholder, and I guess we're really lucky. The nice thing is to get those endorsements. I didn't have any endorsements, obviously, with my first book, but with the second book, getting those endorsements in there from 4 authors.
Yeah.
And then putting in the reviews from the first book, and you think, geez, people are really so generous and they do like what we write. And that gives us so much confidence, doesn't it? Of course, we could always do better. There's no question about that. I totally get that. But we're who we are. We're who we are, and we write what we genuinely believe in it at that time. So I don't think being too self-critical is really such a good thing for an author. Other people will tell you, other people will be honest, and then you might look at what they say. But mostly people are very positive and very kind, and that gives me confidence to keep going. And I think that should apply to all of us. We deserve to have that confidence, because it took us so long, for me anyway, to get to that point, to actually put those poems into a book, and actually have it in a soft back, and the second one was in hardback. And that building up of that confidence over a long period of time is really is really a wonderful thing through the support of the people around us. Thanks a lot, Lachlan. You're great with these questions, mate.
Awesome.
You put us at ease really well. Thank you.
Harriet?
So for me, this is a complex question because I'm a perfectionist.
Yeah.
I'm studying mental health and addiction at university. At the moment, I've gone on a complete career change.
Yeah.
And I do my assignments like 2-3 times before I'm happy with them. And so I don't read. The problem is I don't read books and I just write, and people find that really bizarre when I say that. So I've got my own style of writing. So I write in a kind of, I don't even know what you'd call it. It's like a conscience kind of, you're first person, but you're with the person's thoughts. And I had a guy tell me from quite a well-known literacy agent that I'll never sell any books because no one likes reading diary entries. So when I first published my first book, I was like, oh my God, I'm publishing this just so that I can say that I've done it. And then people started buying it. And I got like 50 people tell me that how amazing the book was. But there's always that self-doubt at the back of my mind, like, oh no, they're just saying that to be nice, you know. And I really need to get out of that mindset because my writing hasn't changed, and I don't think that it will, because it's the way that I write and it's something that I naturally refer to doing. So I think I really need to work on my self-confidence, because people do tell me that they like my book. I've had people tell me that they think it's bad too. So I mean, you know, the balance tips more favorable than when it is negative, but I still can't get out of that negative mindset of what that guy said to me. Yeah. So I have tried, in my last book, I've tried to add in a bit more. I've started reading books about, you know, how to build scenes and stuff. And I've tried to be a bit more developmental in that regard, but then it doesn't feel like me. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm a bit on the fence there, but I'm doing it. I mean, yeah, it is what it is. Not everyone's gonna like your stuff.
Yeah, absolutely, Harriet. That's awesome. AJ?
Yeah, man, my thing at the moment is time. Exactly what Tom said. Like, I just have 3 kids and I want to obviously spend time with my family and manage a house, and I still work. So it's, for me, I love what I make, I do. And I know exactly what Harriet's saying, because I've wrote a book and I tried to do it, I suppose, to be more, I don't know, not more marketable, but just more, I suppose more marketable, open to more people. And I was like, man, I don't know, it's just not what I write. And it's not bad, and it's just not what I usually write. So I'll change that. It'll go back. Yeah, that would be no problem. But definitely time is my biggest thing at the moment. Yeah.
Awesome, AJ. So going on to something a bit different, where do your ideas as authors come from? And has there been a catalyst in your life that has inspired ideas in your stories?
So, as I said before, I see myself as a bit of a reporter. So, like, whatever I see on the news, whatever I read online, whatever, like, history textbooks, history books I read, I tend to include that in my own writing. So, like, if something, like, whether it's negative or positive that's happened in the media or on television, I will write about it, because it's a bit of an, I wouldn't say inspiring, but like it gets me going, like it gets me, it allows me to have all these ideas. Yeah. And so I'm able to write. And as for the catalysts, I've been writing since I was about 10 years old. Now I'm like 25. So I guess the catalyst would be one of my teachers taking me aside and actually saying, oh, you know, you're going to do this when you're older, you're going to be a published author. And she was like the main drive, I guess, behind all this. That's so I guess that's my catalyst, being encouraged by teachers, my mother and my peers and family.
Great stuff, Vanessa. Tom?
I'm going to crave your indulgence and just read a few lines from one of the poems. The Music of Silence, Mount Tomawin, the Kayanga series, 20th of October 2018. The music of silence all around, just some birds and insects creating a sound. For lush, iridescent and deepest green, to create such an amazing scene of bush, mountains and running stream. Spring growth after much needed rain. Last week it just came again and again. It's Mount Tomawin and the Kayanga Freeman Plantation, historic and many decades old. Mulmain, cedar, avocado and banana, pawpaw and something for every farmer. Great views across the mountain ranges, sitting tall, far away from the noisy and crowded shopping mall. Always able to enthrall, as many come to share, captured by views rich and grand, one of Earth's real and magic wonders, not too far away from the beaches and its Gold Coast golden sand, to the north, south and west, magic and extensive, to the Kugel Mountains with its deep and lasting indigenous flavour and cultural splendour. As many a soul, sometimes wounded and in great need of healing, a place for all to come and feel the best of nature and its nurturing. That says it to some extent. There are other poems about other topics as well, but that's always going to really get me going, that type of an environment. Thanks, Lachlan.
Great stuff, Tom. Harriet?
Oh, what did I do? Oh.
I think Tom just cut off. You're cool. Keep on going, Harriet. Let's see. Hey, Harriet, you just click your mute. There you go. You're back on.
Oh, sorry. I thought I unmuted it. Anyway, so back what I was saying is that I get inspiration from people. Yeah. So my next book in my Invisible War series is based on two friends of mine, and one of them, he had a pretty horrific childhood growing up in a foster home situation. Yeah. And the other one, when he got out of the army, he became a drug addict. Yeah. And he suffered from some pretty severe mental health issues. Yeah. So for them, I've used them as my inspiration. I get inspired by people that haven't got rosy stories in life. And then I just, do what I do and write my stories about them. So like, most of my books are kind of not necessarily memoirs of people, but very, what's the word? They're heavily inspired by actual events. So they're basically fictional nonfiction. And I like that because it's telling stories of life in all its colors, So that's where I get my inspiration from.
Awesome, Harriet. AJ?
Man, if I keep myself in good shape and exercise, I honestly, it's a really weird answer. I'll preempt myself, but I almost feel as though ideas just exist and they come to me and I'm just the person that puts them down. Yeah. Like it just, I don't know, just happens. Have you ever read something you've written and it's been a long time? You're like, man, I love that. But like you wrote it. It's pretty weird. So I don't know, just happens. But I have to exercise. You got to get the blood pumping, got to be in shape. Yep. And just usually it's when I'm doing stuff, like for example, maybe if I bath or if I'm driving to work, just doing stuff like mundane chores. And you go, oh, boom, that's the thing. She needs to go in and say that, not him. I've got it wrong way around. Yep. And then you'll figure out that plot point and away you go.
Yeah. Awesome, AJ. So being authors entering the literary landscape, what are your thoughts on where fiction writing is going? And where do you think fiction stories can be improved in general? And what are your thoughts on audiences nowadays?
I'm more of a historical fiction kind of person.
Can you just move your thing around a little bit? See if your volume gets a bit better.
What about now? Can you hear me?
That's it. You're cool.
Okay. So because I mostly write I base my writing of what I see, what I hear, what I have experienced. I don't really normally write a lot of fiction, so I don't know how to answer this. But I guess I can see fiction evolving into new different categories.
Yeah.
But like I said, I'm not really much of a fiction writer, so I can't really answer that. Sorry.
Absolutely. No, that's cool, Vanessa. Tom?
You better repeat that question. This one might be one I have to bypass. What was the question again?
So it's just, do you think stories nowadays can be improved in general? Do you ever go to the bookstore, pick up something and just think, you know, this book shouldn't be here. There should be a lot better books in this bookstore. And what do you think about audiences? Do you think they're sort of more geared to stories that, you know, could be a lot better, or comments on things like that?
That's a really difficult question. I've got friends who do book groups, book club and poetry groups, and you know, they tend to be quite demanding about there's such wide readers, and they've got such extensive knowledge of literature. Yeah. From my own perspective, I really didn't start to read till I was in my mid-30s, and then, you know, I tend to love reading books that people recommended to me. Yeah. And you know, or I'll see a movie, for example, you know, like The Dry. Yeah. And then I mentioned it to my neighbours, and next thing the lady next door, neighbours, dropped me 3 books by Jane Harper. Yeah. And so I've read another one other than The Dry, because I thought, well, I've already seen the movie, I'll pick another one. Yeah. So I think, you know, when I think of the bookshops I go into in Brisbane or up in the Sunshine Coast, there's such a diversity of literature. Yeah. I think it's just so overwhelming to read as much as you'd like to read. Time is the biggest factor for me. Yeah. I think certainly, you know, the community, they certainly have strong leanings, strong interests. There is a fashion thing. You know, my friend John Marsden, who did one of the endorsements of my book, Life is a Dance, I mean, he wrote all those books for teenagers about 15, 20 years ago, or 10 or 15 years ago. And he sold millions, you know, because that was what teenagers found really, really fantastic, really, really interesting. Yeah. And to, you know, I'd have to ask authors like that who've really made it out there. I mean, like J.K. Rowling, for example, did she have any idea how successful she might be? Yeah. Or do you just take a gamble? Do you just take a risk, you know, on a small scale? With my poetry, I know when I write from the heart, how many people that impacts on their heart. And it's not only people my age, it's sort of, you know, covers all ages. And I think, well, geez, isn't that just really wonderful? That blows you away. So there are so many people, obviously, in this world who not everyone's going to like a particular theme. Not everyone's going to like what you or I or Harriet or AJ or Vanessa writes. But with that diversity in society, that there'll be enough people who like a particular type of writing, and there's enough people who are interested in yours or mine, for example, if you know what I mean. So I think as authors, we've got to have that confidence that when we write from the heart, that somebody else is going to enjoy that and pick it up just like for them within their heart and soul as well. Thanks, Lachlan.
Absolutely, Tom. That's great. All right.
So I think we're coming into a really interesting time because I think people are really impatient. Yep. So books are getting pumped out very quickly now. You know, I think I read an interview about J.K. Rowling, and it took her a long time to produce that first book. And I can't talk. I've written 6 books in 5 months, so I'm not one to talk. But I think people are impatient, and if they not getting hooked by a book within the first kind of couple of pages, it's a no-go. I think, and as a reader, I mean, not that I read, I've admitted that I don't read, but I think I can kind of put it into context. As a reader, I think that you're limiting yourself by being impatient, by not allowing a story to kind of grow on you.
Yeah.
But it is very much a sign of, we want things and we want it now kind of thing. And I think with indie publishing and everything that's going now, people are looking for that instant kind of glory that they've published something without actually putting in the hard yards to make a book a masterpiece, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's spot on. AJ?
100% there's room for improvement, but there's also like people they'll read a certain author and they'll know it's like going to be a CIA agent that busts some undercover something or other and has a last minute save, and people buy the exact same storyline over and over and over. Or like the mystery thing, like who was the murderer? People love it. Like, why is that? I don't know. Like, whatever, do whatever you want to do, I say, but within reason, obviously. But I think there's definitely room. Like even like that series idea you were telling me about. Like you can take the themes of stuff like Sherlock Holmes, for example, and you could play around with that same type of theme and make something new. And I suppose it would be a different version of what's already done, but it's like music, man. Like when Black Sabbath makes so much stuff, like what are you going to do after that?
Yeah.
Multiple generations, you're going to not run out of ideas, but it's going to be similar to other things. So I don't think that's bad. It's just, I don't know, it's weird. Another weird thing I've noticed I don't know if this has happened to anyone else, but like people will say, oh, you used the damsel in distress trope. And you're like, what are you talking about? Like, I've never written something in my life thinking I'll use this exact thing. That's what happens. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you get weird criticism. It's not things I would have thought necessarily. Yeah, it just happened. I don't know. There's definitely room for improvement always. Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome, AJ. So how do you guys go about addressing concepts or feelings that are hard to describe in words?
I guess what I tend to do is use metaphors.
Yeah.
And I guess metaphors would be the most easiest for me, at least, to be able to tell the audience what is it like. So, for example, I'll use a cliche one. As cute as a button, like kind of, I don't know, that just implies the my English isn't that bad today. I guess like it's used to emphasize what an idea that the writer is trying to give to the audience.
Yeah. Absolutely. Tom?
Now, I think what helps me sometimes is to think back of the education I've had, for example, in English classes, and say you learned a bit about Shakespeare, for example, or you read sayings. There's so many quotes out there these days, and so I'll throw in a line by Albert Einstein, like adversity introduces a person to themselves or introduces a man to himself.
Yep.
Or talking about Shakespeare's all the world's a stage, men and women merely players.
Yep.
And in old age, for example, sans teeth, sans hair, sans eyes, sans everything, everything deteriorates when you're old. And people like Shakespeare and Einstein and the Dalai Lama and all those poets and authors we grew up with, that I like to quote them occasionally, or Mark Twain, or Van Gogh, who said, you know, if everything is lost, but you have poetry, well, you don't need anything else, for example. So they're the sort of things I like to throw into the mix. I mean, out of 100 poems, I've only done it about 5 or 6 or 7 times, but it still gives it a flavour that I like, because it picks up on my past experience, you know. And I think we're all saying here, we notice things, we're in the moment, we capture things, we experience things. I love the way Harriet says she's not a reader, but she's written 6 or 7 books. Now, I mean, how inspirational is that? How fantastic is that? And every one of you today have said things that will stay with me always. So, you know, I feel that inspiration. I get that inspiration from fellow authors. I get that inspiration from friends, people I meet, and my family, and, you know, your past life. And to be able to use that and then convert it into words, into a poem, for example, is really, I think, for myself, quite special. Thanks, Lachlan.
Great stuff. Harriet?
Tom, I'm just gonna, oh, he's gone anyway. I don't where's he gone? Tom, I'm just gonna clarify. So I don't read because I work full time. I've got 3 kids under 5, and I've decided to do the silliest thing ever and take on study again so that I can become a counsellor after doing a degree in construction. So
I said you were inspirational. You are hugely inspirational.
So that's why I don't read, and I do a lot of reading for work. So for me, I kind of grasp punctuation and stuff from, you know, my university readings and stuff. I think, yeah, I'm just not a reader. When it comes down to writing emotion, though, I think for me, because obviously all my books are very emotional books, I just put myself in the character's shoes, and I'm like, okay, how would I look if I was having this conversation? How would I feel? And making sure that those feelings are really put across, because that's what a lot of my books are, you know, the emphasis is about how is this person feeling, and you know, the mental health, you know, factors and what have you. So it's really just for me putting myself in their shoes about how I would personally feel. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome, Harriet. AJ?
Yeah, I don't really have much trouble describing, just word selection, pretty basic writing stuff. But for example, if rather than just say I loved her, I would use exaggeration, for example. Like, you know, if I lived 1,000 different lives, I'd meet her 1,000 different times and fall in love 1,000 different ways. Yeah. Something simple like that would it'd show the guy's a bit psychotic and also passionate, driven, you know. So you tend to use things like that when it comes to emotion, but I don't know. I'll just say whatever it is. Don't really have much trouble with that.
Yeah. Awesome, AJ. So we have a nice mix of authors here in this group and types of books that we're doing. So I think it's appropriate to ask a question. But are any of you guys worried about being slotted into a certain category?
For me, I personally don't really care because
Vanessa, sorry, we have to do it again. Do the little shake.
All right, what about now?
Yeah, you sweet.
So, sorry, can anyone hear me?
Yep, you're cool.
Okay. Yeah. So yes and no for me, because I don't just do poetry or short stories. I also do commentary, and sometimes I do like a little novel here and there, but I don't I just don't really mind being slanted into one category.
Yeah.
Because no, I just don't mind it at all.
Yeah, cool, Vanessa. Tom?
I think I have to accept it the way it is. That this website just put me. I have to accept that I probably won't move. Just a sec. Sorry.
Might have to go on to you, Harriet.
In terms of getting kind of boxed into one thing, not really, because all my stories are really different. I think my only concern is that people will question whether I'm like severely depressed or something, because a lot of my stuff is pretty heavy. But you know, my next book that I hope to write, it will be a mystery book. So I'm trying to, you know, play my hands at different, you know, still exploring the elements that I'm passionate about, but making all my books really different so that I don't get necessarily boxed, if that makes sense. I think you should, as gosh, I can't think of his name, as you said before, that you've got to have your hands in different pots, because if you're wanting to be a writer, not everything you write is going to appeal to someone. You know, but your style might, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
AJ?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with what Harriet just said. No, it depends, man. Like, definitely, I don't think I've done the same book over and over. And well, no, I haven't, because they're not even near the same. But I don't really think being slotted into a category is like a bad thing.
Yeah.
Like, if it's a style you like that could be an awesome marketing tool, So I guess it depends. But if you slot it into like boring and predictable, well, then yeah, I wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
So I guess it depends what it is. Yeah, like I think Guy Ritchie's an awesome example, or Quentin Tarantino. Like, those dudes write about completely different things, but their style is just impeccable. Like, it's, you know, it's genius, really. So you know what I mean? It's weird. Like, I was talking to my wife about it. You say it's got a Guy Ritchie tinge, or it's sort of like a Tarantino film. But they've pretty much made their own genre based on their artistic style.
Yeah.
Yeah, which isn't bad. Like, it's not bad. That's awesome.
All right, awesome. How are you going, Tom? Can you hear us? You good? All right, so I'll go on to my next question. Do you sometimes feel like your lack of experience on a certain topic will show in your stories? And if so, how do you overcome that fear of self-doubt?
I guess, well, for me personally, I don't really think about I don't really think about it often, because what I write is basically like a news story or something about my personal experience. So I honestly not too sure how to answer this question, because because what I write is based on um my own personal experience, how I'm feeling or whatnot, but also like news or like any other massive media outlets, like their stories.
Yeah.
But the thought never really came to my mind, so I honestly don't know how to answer that.
No, you're sweet, Vanessa. Tom? Did you hear?
Just repeat the question. Thanks, Lachlan.
Okay, so do you sometimes feel like your lack of experience on a certain topic will show in your stories? And if so, how do you overcome that fear of self-doubt?
That's another good question, but it's a bit of a difficult one. Self-doubt, I guess, you know, it can take years before you build up confidence. And when I see you guys all being in your 20s and 30s, and Aaron said he's 40 and he called himself young. That's a lovely age. You guys are certainly young. And thanks, Lachlan, for saying you young writers when I'm 70. What a compliment. So I guess I have, you know, I've sort of answered it before. You get to a certain stage in life and you just move on and think it's hard to change very much, but I do have to acknowledge that you're learning all the time. I'm learning all the time about life and about writing and that's through Facebook with authors and other like authors on Facebook. They're always sending new sayings and new quotes, and then I've met up with a poet who sends off a poet around the world every week, which is quite extraordinary that he's kept this up for years and years and years. And so reading other people's works, it's just by osmosis that you're picking up things and reading more and just engaging more with life and people around you. That's a great teacher. For me, that's now the teacher, connecting with people and connecting with what people send me through the links we've made over the last few years through the writing. Thanks, Lachlan.
Awesome, Tom. How are you going, Harriet?
So for me, I think given the subjects that I write about, I think it would be ignorant of me not to have concerns that because particularly with a couple of the things I don't have any experience with. PTSD, I have known nothing about. So for me, it was just really ensuring that with everyone that I interviewed, if I had any sense of doubt about certain things, I'd ask to interview them again. So I had a really clear picture of what it was that I wanted to portray based off their experiences. I think we should all have a little bit of doubt, because that's what will make you a better writer, because you're always going to be looking for ways to improve.
Yeah, absolutely. AJ?
Yeah, man, if I'm something I'm really completely inexperienced with, or I just wouldn't put it in my book. Usually there's a way around something like just for example, say you have a thing, I grew up with firearms, and my wife's father, he's passed away, but he was a pretty avid gun guy. But if I was writing something about guns and I hadn't fired them, you could do a lot of other things rather than the actual act of firing that firearm that could convey the message you want. So if it was a plot device I had to have in there, but it was something I had no experience in, I would use that to maybe look at the character more so than the act. So things like that, I would get around it. But if it's something that I'm completely just out of my wheelhouse, I just wouldn't write about it. Yeah. And also, if I'm doing something in fiction worlds, I'll make it really obvious it's made up. Like A Decent Life 2 is very obvious it's fiction. And so that allows me a lot more creative freedom. I can just play around with whatever I want.
Yeah, awesome, AJ. I don't know where Tom just went then, but we shoot off to the next question. All right, he's back. Okay, so guys, I know finding the time to write can be difficult, especially when you have full-time work, or if you're a full-time parent and you don't have books as your main source of income. How do you juggle life and writing, and what are your tips for anyone who's watching this video on how to do this? And Vanessa, before you answer, do you mind just doing that little jiggle again? Yeah, that's it.
In other words, Lachlan, life is a dance with a jiggle.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess you need to have a bit of time management. Me as a full-time university student, and I do have the occasional odd jobs, including my jewelry business. Time management is very important, and I can't speak for anyone else here, but I tend to set time on when I do certain things. So if I have an assessment due, the next week, I will do it the week before, and then just organize how many words do I do and not. Anyways, yeah, time management is very important for me.
Yeah.
And then just be able to manage your time wisely, and maybe to-do lists, they could help as well. So
Absolutely. Great stuff, Vanessa. Tom?
If we get the answer right to this, we've solved the mystery of the universe, the mystery of life itself, because time management is really, really a challenge. You'd think the older you get, the better it gets, but sometimes somehow you take on more things instead of fewer things. I guess people will say to me all the time, when are you going to retire? And if I retired, I may end up having more time to write. Maybe not, because there'll be other distractions. It's certainly a never-ending challenge.
Yep.
And I think for me, it's when I'm in a different space. If I'm traveling, if I'm in a new place, a new environment, if there's something happening in the media, or you've read a book, or you've heard about an experience through the media, you end up being quite opportunistic. So for me, it's more about being opportunistic. I guess it's a little bit like with Vanessa being an observer and a reporter. And so, new experiences, then I just make the time, but still happens too infrequently, unfortunately. So I still have to get better at it. Thanks, Lachlan.
Great stuff, Tom. Harriet?
So this may not be agreed with by many, but I think that you make time for what's important to you.
Yeah.
So, my life is crazy. Like, you have no idea. Working full time, and then I do clinical placement on a Monday. I got 3 kids under 5. My partner's in the military, so he goes away a lot. We've got no family support, but I still manage to do it. And I don't know if it's just because I am a freak or what, but once the kids go down to bed, I'm like, right, okay, I've got 4 hours before I need to go to bed. I'm going to structure it this, and this. I just put it in my mind, this is what I'm going to do. And when I get stuck writing, if I get stuck writing my book, I kind of do a bit of mentalization techniques. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to pick an animal and I'm going to write about that animal for 10 minutes to bring myself back to that creative focus. That's just what I do, and it generally does tend to help just to bring me back. And then if I'm still stuck, well, then I'm like, okay, I'm going to leave it. Very rarely does that happen, but, that's just what I do. But I do think that you make time for what's important to you. And if writing is of significant importance, you just make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. AJ?
Yeah, mate, time management. So what I want to get done today, the week, the month, then prioritizing, obviously. And then as I've learned exactly what Tom said, I'm a few years behind him, not quite 70. But it doesn't get easier. I also had 3 kids in 3 years, 0 family support, all the rest. It's everything everyone goes through. And that's just what life is. If you want to achieve stuff, you could do less. You could sit around and have lots of time, and that would be, to me, a loser. So I'm not going to do that. And you just have to be fluid. That's what I've been learning, man. The last year, if I'm tired, I'm tired. That's just what it is. If I can't write today, I can't write today. So be it. Healthy, young, own a house, got a family. It's like putting icing on the cake, isn't it? If it takes me a month, if it takes me a year, if it takes me 10 years, whatever, this is of no concern to me.
Awesome, AJ. So 2 final questions for you guys. What's the last great book that you've read, and what book has shaped you as a writer? And did a little jiggle. That's it. Well done, Vanessa.
So one of the last great books that I've read is The Divine Comedy by Dante Alighieri. I don't know if anyone has heard about it, but it's basically a depiction of hell, purgatory, and heaven. And a lot of it has inspired my 3rd and 4th book, which is a 2-part series. And it combines mythology with religion, and that's something that I've done in my 2nd book. So it was actually, it's a really great book to read if you're not really crazy religious, but if you're inspired by certain depictions of art. Sorry, what was the last question?
And what book has shaped you as a writer? Or it could be books.
Oh God. Honestly, this is going to sound a bit, I don't know, but I grew up in a very religious household.
Yep.
So when I was very young, my grandmother bought me the first children's Bible, and I was able to like summarize passages. So I guess that would be a type of book that has shaped a bit of my writing also.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool stuff, Vanessa. Tom?
Okay, I've just finished, whoopsie daisy, finished 2 books, one Wasted, called Wasted, about the suicide of a young guy in Brisbane through excess use of alcohol. And the other one, the Trump story, written by Donald's sister, Mary. And so they're both about families, interestingly enough. And I certainly do a lot of mediations in the family space.
Yeah.
And so interestingly with Trump, it was all about money and the abuse of money and power. And with the Wasted one, it was all about alcohol and the abuse of alcohol.
Yeah.
So money and alcohol, 2 common themes there, and obviously issues in our day-to-day lives, or a lack of money very, very often. So that's probably enough said about those 2 books. And then, you know how I talked about Shakespeare before, and great dramas like Macbeth, for example, or King Lear, you know, the pathos in the King Lear drama play with his 3 daughters, and again family oriented, I guess, and words like poor naked wretches, where you are, that bide the peltings of this pitiless storm, how can your houseless heads and unfed sides, your windowed and looped raggedness defend against storms such as these? Maybe just those very few words have had quite an influence on me. Thanks, Lachlan.
Awesome stuff. Harriet?
Well, you know I don't read.
Yeah.
So I can't comment on this at all, other than I can't comment on this. But I did read The Secret, and I think that some of it is definitely should be applied to our everyday life. You know, I'm a big advocate about gratitude and things like that, and so that's all I can say.
You're sweet, Harriet. Cool stuff. AJ?
Yeah, man, this book's awesome. Have you ever read that? Oh, where are you?
See that at the bookstore all the time, yeah.
Australian author, sits on a plot point for a very long time and then delivers it just perfectly. Yeah. This book seems a bit weird. Sorry, Great Expectations. But I love how he just delivers it, man. Like, that's just what it is. I love that. This book, The Alchemist, another classic, can't go wrong. And also Fight Club, because it's raw and brutal and I like fighting. So it's definitely there too.
Awesome, AJ. Has there been a certain book that you can say has been like the most inspirational, or they're all sort of at the same level?
No, even like I lost the cover because I lent it to my daughter, but George St. Pierre's book, Canadian Fighter, just the way he just delivers it. Like, I don't know. I like anything from biography to autobiography, people's story. Probably the most, I don't know, probably The Alchemist, man, if I was to answer honestly. I like it's just a weird, little bit trippy. He's off in crystal shops and freaking farms and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's cool.
Awesome stuff, AJ. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks so much for joining me. For everyone watching this video, if you haven't already, remember to check out the social media links below. Also, if you'd like to meet other awesome writers and learn more about our journeys, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks heaps, guys. I'll catch up with you all soon.
See you later.
Thanks so much. See you later, guys. Great meeting you other guys as well.